Well, Shadi Hamid says you're making a mistake if you compare Libya to Egypt. He's the director of research at the Brookings Doha Center. He says Libya is more like Kosovo or Bosnia, places where leaders carried out premeditated killings. He's been calling for the world to intervene. He joins us now by phone from Doha, Qatar. Shadi, it's so good to talk to you again. Last time we spoke, the two of us were in Egypt. Very, very different situation what's happening in Libya right now. Why is it more like Kosovo?
Well, what we're talking here now is mass slaughter on a large scale. And Libyan leader Muammar Qaddafi made that very clear in his speech the other night, where he said unequivocally that he is willing to massacre his own citizens if that's what it takes to survive. So it's not as if we don't have to parse his words or wonder what the intentions of the regime are. It's very clear. And we in the international community, the world is watching now. Are we just going to sit back and issue denunciations while a leader says he's going to kill his own people? And I think this is really a critical time and a critical test for the UN, the US, NATO, the EU. All of these countries and organizations have a role to play.
President Obama, responded to pressure to make comment by yesterday coming forward and saying, once again, the U.S. strongly condemns what's happening there. And he also tried to make the point that the U.S. has no influence there at the moment, trying to say, don't blame us for what's happening on the ground. So are we overestimating the role that the U.S. could have? What does a response look like to you?
Sure. Well, first of all, I think we're well beyond condemnations and rhetoric and all of that. We have to be creative. As President Obama said, there aren't the traditional instruments here because we don't have a good relationship with Libya. That's why we have to think outside of the box, and there's a number of interesting ideas. One of them is for NATO to enforce a no-fly zone over Libya. We can certainly get more serious about seizing assets immediately. It's remarkable to me that more than a week into this, we're still having this debate about whose assets to seize.
Right.
I think the U.S. has to make clear that any individuals who are perpetrating atrocities will be tried in the International Criminal Court. And you know what? There's actually some, if we want to even go further than that, and I don't think we're at this point yet, but maybe in a week or two, if this continues and we're talking about tens of thousands dying, then I think we have to talk about a more decisive foreign intervention, and that can take a number of forms.
Well, Secretary of State Clinton will be traveling to Europe to meet with some of her counterparts and discuss this at the Human Rights Council. Monday seems like a long way away for many of those people on the ground in Libya. What do you think is actually on the table besides just a no-fly zone? What does humanitarian intervention look like?
Sure. Well, one possibility is to invoke Chapter 7 of the UN Charter and authorize some kind of deployment force. Of course, that's challenging, and it's probably not the right time just yet. But what that would look like is these peacekeeping troops would protect civilian populations in the eastern part of the country from any aggression from the Qaddafi regime. Another interesting idea is arming the rebels, and I'm not necessarily fully on board with that idea, but if we're talking 2 more weeks into this and it's a stalemate, I think the international community is going to have to think, how do we help the people on the ground who are fighting for their freedom? And it's unfortunate that Iraq has really tainted this idea of foreign intervention, because now is the time where we really have to consider that seriously.
Shadi, it's always good talking to you, and I enjoyed reading your piece in Slate yesterday on this. Wanted to get your perspective today. Take care.
Thanks for having me on, Margaret. Okay.